to you.
Okay, you can tell you then that could get you the Tuscan Villa.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's move over to Michael. Michael, welcome. Crowdoscope is for those of you who don't know Crowdoscope, we've been using it for the past year. It's quite an unusual, it's so much better than using SurveyMonkey. Just give us an elevator pitch on what Crowdoscope is.
Well, it's a new type of survey and discussion tool which captures social collective intelligence. So compared to a survey where stuff kind of disappears into a black hole, it actually has a feedback loop that presents participants with the information that people have put in. So it's about reading and rating other people's comments. And through that interaction, we're able to get another layer of insight on the results, which I'll show you in some of the slides that we've got prepared.
Okay, great. So we've been running this since June, 171 participants, and really it was about should IC be driving the digital agenda. Now, what I like about this system is you don't just get a bunch of comments, you get these wonderful bubbles which show you where the interest is, the leading comments, and what people think about them. But it's difficult to read it, the top left-hand corner there, but that says that...
So one of the things that Crowdoscope does is it overcomes this problem of list-based discussions, which you probably all have. It's all over the internet, whether it's in your enterprise social network, but it's information overload. Not everyone has an equal chance of being heard, and the solution to that is to present the conversation as an interactive data visualization, which we show here. So we're using these nested circles visualization, and we're grouping people by a multiple choice question, which in this case was compared to other functions, to what extent do you think internal communications is the right function to lead the digital agenda in organizations? And you can see here that there's roughly, this is what participants see, okay? This isn't a slide that we use to feedback results to leadership and such like. But roughly 2/3 of our sample felt that internal communications was the right function to be leading it. And each of these blue circles represents participants' comment, and as I said before, it's more about people reading and rating each other's comments. If you flick...
Yeah, but just to make a point, that top left-hand corner there is, in terms of the people saying they're definitely the right function, 20%. So on this one, only 20% of people say definitely the right function. And how many of these were communicators? About half of the sample?
About 50% of the sample was from internal communications. Yeah. And it's roughly the same, actually. If we just look at that 50% of internal communications, you roughly get the same results. There's actually people who work in internal communications, obviously not here today, who don't think that IC is the right function to be leading it.
Clearly. You are the vanguard, the pioneers.
And every Crowdoscope you can see here is based around one open-ended question, which in this case is what do you think is the main challenge that internal communications face in driving forward the digital agenda. And we're trying to be a bit more sophisticated about how you rate these comments. It's not just about likes, we're rating it on how much of a challenge is this and how insightful is this. And one of the outputs, the great outputs, is you can have an unlimited amount of participants, and here's all the comments ranked in order of what the community think of them. So even if you have 1,000 comments, 10,000 comments, you're like crowdsourcing the text analysis, and this is a really useful thing to have to say this is the top comment. I'm not going to read any of these.
I'm going to read the top one.
All right, go ahead.
I am, because otherwise people will wonder what on earth was scored highest. I believe the biggest challenge relates to building and maintaining a relationship with IT to support the infrastructure that's needed to have an engaging, user-friendly and beneficial digital workplace. Internal communication cannot do it alone. It has to make it a priority to support the technology platforms. Also, IC needs to have an understanding of knowledge management to serve as the business analyst between IT and business users. It's not just about corporate communications. So that was the top one. That's what people thought the most about.
Yeah, and that was a mixture of people rating in terms of how much is this a challenge in their organisation, how insightful is this comment.
So it's a massive cultural thing right from the beginning, which is learn to work with IT.
Yeah, absolutely, and that comes through as well, because what we can do next is then to use text analysis to group up all these comments in terms of what people are talking about, so we can get a more kind of holistic view of the data. And here it is, this collaboration with other departments, talked about by nearly 20% of the population, going down, lack of technical skills, adequate resources, obviously, credibility, which is something that came up in terms of internal communications, right down to you see this one at the bottom, behavioural change, talked about by about 5% of the sample. Because obviously digital agenda necessitates new ways of working, new ways of doing things. And what Crowdoscope can do, you can get that stuff from a normal survey, is to look at how, to basically provide a community lens. So on the horizontal axis here, we have this evaluation criteria we used, how much of a challenge is this in your organisation, and up the vertical axis we can see how insightful people are rating these comments. So with regards to collaboration with other departments, a lot of people are talking about it. People rate all these comments as being, yes, this is a big challenge in my company, and yes, these comments are very insightful. So it's people talking about relationships with IT and HR and procurement, building relationships. This thing about IT connecting the business, which I think is the right thing to do forward, and internal communications kind of helping to align different agendas across the business and different functional units. And behavioural change, which I already mentioned, new ways of doing things, leadership modelling new behaviours, etc., etc. And that's really the key. I mean, this is one of the key things that is, a lot of things come out in research, and it's using this community lens to identify what are the most important factors. And it's not necessarily the things that people are talking about the most. So, for example, in this study, you can't see it there because it's hidden. People talking about a lack of skills wasn't rated particularly highly. There's a lot of people talking about it, but people say, this isn't really a challenge in my company, and these comments aren't particularly insightful.
Great. I mean, so that gives you that insight. So if you want to know more about Crowdoscope, that's where to find it. If you want to try out Kurt's benchmark, then follow the link. But gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on and starting the show. And give it, ladies and gentlemen, Kurt and Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.